You. Let's get some more on all of this. Joining us, Congressman John Garamendi. He's a Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us.
Good to be with you.
I want to get to North Korea and all the other issues, but first, let's discuss the story CNN broke right at the top of the hour. The FBI using that Trump dossier to get a FISA warrant for Carter Page. What's your reaction to that? Does it suggest that at least some of the context of that dossier were verified by the FBI?
Oh, I think yes. The answer would be yes. They would not be able to go to the FISA court with only that. They had to back it up with additional information, and apparently they succeeded in getting the additional information and getting the warrant, and whatever additional information they've gathered as a result of that, we'll find. But one thing, it's absolutely apparent to me and should be to all Americans, is that this cannot be handled by Congress. There has to be an independent committee set up outside of all of the politics of Congress so that we can get to the bottom of an exceptionally important part of the American democracy.
But the Senate Intelligence Committee is investigating. The House Intelligence Committee is investigating. The FBI is also investigating. You heard James Comey say there's a criminal investigation underway. Isn't that enough?
No, it's not. The two congressional investigations are tainted with politics. It's the nature of us. It's the nature of those people that are in Congress and the Senate. Rarely are we able to push aside the politics and get down to what is really going on. And the American people have to have trust in the investigation. The House investigation is purely tainted. The Senate is somewhat better off. But let's get an independent organization in place.
I want to move on, but do you have confidence in the FBI investigation, Congressman?
Let's just say I'm hopeful.
What does that mean? Doesn't sound like you have a lot of confidence in the FBI Director, James Comey.
I want Comey to prove to us that he's going to carry this out. He appeared in a classified session with us, and frankly, most Democrats were very, very disappointed with what he had to say. So this is his opportunity to prove himself, to prove that the FBI is capable, is not going to be partisan one way or the other, but we'll get to the facts. However, given the FBI, it's not necessary that those facts will ever be made public. And that's why an independent investigation, making the facts, all of the information, whether there is or is not a problem, we need to know. The FBI may never be able to or may never want to reveal that, nor do they have to.
All right, let's shift to North Korea right now. The Trump administration saying a miscommunication is to blame for the USS Carl Vinson, the aircraft carrier, and the entire battle group not necessarily being sent to Korean Peninsula, even as the President, the Defense Secretary were claiming it was moving towards the Korean Peninsula. Can the United States afford a miscommunication like that when dealing with a threat from North Korea?
No, cannot. And this is one of the fundamental problems of this administration. This last 5 days, we've seen the administration shift positions on fundamental issues, at least 5 major fundamental issues they've shifted positions on. And so the world doesn't really know what they mean. And then this is one more example, call it miscommunications, which I suppose it is. But the rest of the world says, what is going on over there? Do they have any idea what they're doing? One day it's yes, the next day it's no. In between, people are wondering. And with regard to Korea, it is a very, very dangerous situation. You talk about a hair trigger, that's what exists on the Korean Peninsula.
Yeah, that DMZ may be the most dangerous spot on Earth right now. You're on the Armed Services Committee. As you know, the Pentagon describes the missile defense system that will be tested in May as having what they call limited capability to defend the U.S. homeland from North Korean intercontinental ballistic missiles, and says only about half of the tests so far of this system have been successful. Are American defenses keeping up with what is seen as a growing threat from Kim Jong-un?
Well, at the present time, the answer is yes. Insofar as intercontinental ballistic missiles are concerned, we have sufficient number of missiles. While one or another of those might miss, we can fire off a significant salvo, and we can deter or take down a limited number of missiles. And for some time, North Korea will not have either an intercontinental ballistic missile or a nuclear warhead that can be placed on that missile. So we're talking about some time in the future where this will be a real situation. At the moment, the most likely way of delivering a nuclear weapon to the United States is on a fishing boat. into one of our ports, not on an intercontinental ballistic missile, at least in the near term.
Question is definition of the near term. Congressman, stand
Yes,
by.
exactly.
We have a lot more to discuss. There are new developments coming into the Situation Room. We'll be right back.
And you know, it should be said that the Obama administration also at times struggled with this relationship. Remember, after the coup attempt, as Erdogan was cracking down with tens of thousands of people affected, the White House at first refused to say they had any problem with it. It was only after constant questioning by reporters that they finally admitted, okay, we have some concerns. Wolf?
All right, Michelle, thank you. Michelle Kaczynski at the State Department. Let's get back to Congressman Garamendi. So, Congressman, the Trump administration seems to be implying that speaking out on this shift towards authoritarianism in Turkey would hurt the overall fight against ISIS. Do you believe this is an either-or situation?
No, not at all. I do think that the White House is quite correct that Trump is protecting an American interest in Istanbul. Clearly, President Trump has a serious conflict of interest in everything that goes on in Turkey, and this isn't the first example of where he has weighed into Turkish issues that ultimately come to his benefit. And the interview with Bannon is a pretty good example where he admits his own conflict. This speaks to the larger issue of just who and what is Trump protecting. Now, in the larger sense, Turkey is an extremely important part of the American NATO system, also an extremely important part of the fight against ISIS, not without some serious difficulties as to what to do with the Kurds who we support, that is the Syrian Kurds, in their effort to go after ISIS. The Turks clearly oppose that, and so this conflict has yet to be worked out. One of the reasons that things seem to stall in the attack on Raqqa is that this issue between Turkey, the Kurds, the Syrian Kurds, and the United States has not yet been worked out.
Certainly hasn't. So what message do you believe, Congressman, President Trump's reaction to this referendum sends to other foreign leaders?
Well, it sends, don't worry about democracy. You're not going to get anything from the White House about human rights, about democracy, civil liberties, and the rest. Take Philippines, for an example. The president has been very, very quiet about what's gone on in the Philippines with Duterte, and at the same time, Duterte has sent as his personal emissary to the White House Mr. Trump's business partner. These connections are very, very troublesome because it leads all of us to wonder just what is the priority. Is it personal business or is it the American business? It's not clear in my mind. These questions are raised multiple times across the entire world. And then the Ivanka Trump issue of receiving 2 additional trademarks after meeting with Xi at Mar-a-Lago. What is that all about? This woman at that time was a White House aide. She was an employee of the U.S. government, of the American people, meeting personally with the president of China and then getting a little goodie on the hands like a trademark. These are real serious questions about conflict of interest at the highest level of the American government, and by the way, happens to be the way in which business is conducted in China, or at least was conducted in China. Favoritism to the powerful. We can't have that in America, but we're beginning to see that in many, many ways with this White House. And by the way, we really ought to have the tax returns so we can know exactly what the conflicts are.
John Garamendi, the congressman from California, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Just ahead, the Armada mix-up. How did U.S. officials get the location of U.S. warships wrong? And did President Trump oversell it as a show of force aimed at Kim Jong-un? And the president's Buy American message, is it resonating at a time when many Americans don't think he's keeping his promises?